So I hope you get energized with our energizer, and I hope we have, as what I have said, we have a positive mindset before we start with the gist of our discussion for this session. Now, let's start with the first phase of our discussion. We will be discussing test and what are the different phases in terms of test construction. As we define test, it is an instrument, a tool or device which is consists of set of questions designed to measure any quantity, ability or skill or knowledge to what extent students have learned. So I hope we are clear with our definition of what is meant of the word test, a tool, a device or an instrument. Note as teachers, we need to identify what is the purpose of giving the test, because again as teachers many times that we defeat the essence of giving test as part of the teaching learning process. And I hope we are not giving a test as a form of punishment or discipline to our students, as because we are not prepared to discuss new lesson, because you have something to do which is urgent and important, or for the sake of compliance. I hope among these reasons you are not guilty of this, because again many times teachers are guilty of these reasons. That's why we tend to defeat the purpose of giving tests uh, in our inside the classroom. The purposes of giving tests. So number one, the reason why we give tests is to assess what students have learned. So that's the primary reason why there is a test after the lesson. Second, to identify students' strengths and weaknesses. And third, to measure effectiveness of the teaching. That's why in your evaluation part, at the end of the evaluation, there is ID or instructional decision. So what's the purpose of your ID? Your ID will determine whether you will enhance, whether you will reteach, or whether you will proceed to your lesson. So it will determine whether you achieve your learning objectives or not. So definitely, if you were not able to achieve your learning objective, teaching is not said to be effective. That's why you need to enhance or you need to reteach. However, if you proceed, so definitely you're able to achieve what you intend to achieve. Your test is classified in two different categories. It can be classified as standardized, or the other one is the teacher-made test. So when we talk about standardized test, take note of the key terms. It is made by the expert in light of accepted objective. What does it mean? Meaning to say this type of tests are carefully constructed by the people behind making national examinations such as national achievement test, for instance for the board examination for teachers, and other types of examinations given nationwide. However, when we talk about teacher-made tests, these are type of tests wherein created by classroom teachers, which will measure students' progress at the end of the lesson. So you can see the difference between standardized and teacher-made tests. To make it simple, standardized created by the experts, given by or being taken by group of people. That's why it is called national achievement test, or any kinds of achievement examinations given nationwide. Or the other one is the teacher made test, which is given by the teacher at the end of the lesson. So for instance, if you're talking about the concepts of butterfly, and then your teacher gave a 5-item true or false type of test, so that's an example of teacher-made test. Examples of standardized tests. So number one, we have here the ability test. Perhaps you are familiar with this type of test because commonly this type of test is taken during national career achievement examinations. So we have a combination of numeric, reasoning, computation, and nonverbal. So this is an example of your ability test. Second, another type of standardized test, we have your aptitude test. From the word itself, when we talk about aptitude, it measures potential where in which specific field of discipline you are good. So for instance, if you are taking the general admission and then once you pass the general admission, for instance in college, you will be getting aptitude tests so that you will be placed properly in which field of discipline you are inclined with. It's either you are inclined in teacher ed, nursing, engineering, so on and so forth. On the other hand, when we talk about teacher-made test, we have objective type. When we say objective type, take note of this. Answers are in one form or in single form. It could be a word, a phrase, or a symbol. Very important to determine the key term single or best answer. Again, don't forget we have single or best answer for objective type of test. Now, later on, you will realize why this test is under objective type. Number one, we have here the multiple choice type of test. I'm sure that all of you are familiar with the multiple choice type of test since elementary until in high school or even now in college you're getting this type of test. But we need to understand the different parts of the multiple choice type of test. So number one, we have here consist of STEM and number two consists of alternatives. Now, if we're going to look at this example, which is the STEM and which are considered as alternatives. Alright, so that's good. So when we talk about STEM, that refers to the question. So if we're going to use this example, after doing the exercise on verbs, Mrs. Borrelio gave a short quiz to find out how well students have understood the lesson. What type of assessment was done? So again, the STEM is your question. So this is your STEM and these are your alternatives. When we talk about alternatives, these are the options or the destructors. And take note, under destructors or options, we have the term keyed option. When we talk about keyed option, it refers to the correct answer. That's why it is referred to keyed. Keyed means correct answer. Let's recap. So we have here STEM, which is the question, and then we have the alternatives, we have the options or destructors, and then we have the correct answer, which is the keyed answer. Now, if we're going to identify what's the keyed answer here, so it is summative assessment, formative, diagnostic, or placement test. Take note, a type of short quiz to find out students have understood the lesson. So this is an example of formative assessment, meaning to say formative assessment, option B is considered as your kid option, and then option A, C, and D are considered as your destructors. Another type of teacher-made test is what we call your true-false type of test. It consists of declarative statements that one has to respond either true or false, right or wrong, correct or incorrect, yes or no, fact or opinion, and the like. So it is a test made up of items which allows dichotomous responses. It is other known as your alternative response because you have two options to choose and take note there is single best answer. That's why it's under objective type of test. Now, what are the different parts of your true or false? Yes, later on we will be discussing that one. But for the meantime, let's try to consider these examples. A test is a tool or a device that is used to measure what students have learned in the lesson. So it is true or false. All right, that's perfect. So the answer here is true. Because again, a tool is a device. Second, measurement is the process of giving judgment to the test result. Take note of the key terms to make it easy for you to answer. Measurement, and then we have judgment. Take note, when we give judgment, that refers to your evaluation. That's perfect. So measurement is quantifying, not giving judgment. Therefore, the answer for item number 2 is not true. So it is false. Next, teacher-made test is what we call the matching type test. It consists of parallel columns with number, word, or symbol in column being matched to word or sentences in the other column. So it comprises with column A and comprises with column B. So if we're going to look at this example, we have column A and column B. And take note, column A refers to your premises and column B refers to your responses. Don't get confused. Again, this is column A, the premises, and column B refers to your responses. I hope we are clear with premises and responses, right? Right, meaning to say column A, these are the questions, and then column B, these are the options. Premises are placed or located at column A, and then responses are located at a column B. Next, teacher-made test is what we call the completion test or fill in the blank. It consists of an incomplete statement that can be answered by a word, phrase, or number, or even a symbol. So this is an example of your completion type of test or fill in the blank. Next, last type of teacher-made test is what we call your essay test. Take note, essay test is quite different compared with other types of teacher-made test because for essay, it is not objective because you can have many answers or many interpretations in answering essay type of test. That's why we have here two types of essay. It could be your interpretation or responses are limited, or it could be you have the freedom to respond to a question. If you're limited, definitely it is an restricted essay. However, if it's extended, you have the freedom to explore, elaborate your answer, so on and so forth. So again, limits both the content or responses that is restricted. When we talk about restriction, there are limitations, and then extended, meaning to say you have the freedom to elaborate your answers. So we have restricted and then extended essay. Aside from standardized tests, aside from teacher-made tests, what are the other types of tests? We have here number one, psychological test. So definitely you are familiar with this type of test because we encounter this especially if we are having psychological examination to make sure that we are mentally fit. So for teachers, it is a must that every year or annually we have psychological examination to guarantee that teachers are not only physically fit but also mentally fit. It aims to measure students' intangible aspect of behavior like intelligence, attitudes, interest, and aptitude. So this is an example of your psychological test. So it's either you will respond strongly disagree, slightly disagree. So this is an example of your Likert scale. Aside from that, we have here also your mastery test. So mastery test measures the degree of course, mastery of limited set of specific learning outcomes and typically use criterion referenced interpretation. So why use of criterion referenced interpretation? Because when we talk about criterion referenced interpretation, we have set of standard or criteria that we need to achieve. For example, you need to achieve 95% mastery. So once you achieve 95% mastery, you reach the criterion, definitely you were able to pass the mastery test. What about power test? Power test is designed to measure the level of performance. Take note of that. When we talk about power test, you measure the level of performance under sufficient time condition. So for instance, if you are getting the test, it is arranged in order of or in order to increase difficulty level. For instance, you will be getting the acid test. Once you pass the acid test, the level of performance will increase. You will go through with average and then you will reach the difficult level. So there is increasing level of performance. Test, you are being measured in terms of complexity and time, meaning to say there is no problem in terms of level of difficulty. However, you are being challenged because of the time constraint, meaning to say the time is being decreased. That's why it is called speed test. Consist of items approximately on the same level. However, it varies according to time. So that's the difference between speed test and power test. Again, as a recap, power test, increased level in terms of performances, and then speed test, you are being measured in terms of the number of the amount of time.